Okay guys, we have narrowed down our 4 roughs to one that we really like, and in this case I'm going to pick number 3. Now we need to get started working on that file, fine-tuning it and making it suitable for print. So here's how you do that. We just grab all this by just dragging the marquee against the whole thing and hit Command C or Control C if you're on a PC. And then let's make a new file. And we want this document to be 9 by 12. Mine happens to be on that because I did this before. We have a 9 by 12 inches, and if it doesn't have inches, it has something else, you can convert it here. We only need one page. Now, this area here, remember, the columns and margins are just the guides. We don't really know what our margin's going to be because we're just getting started setting that up, but you can change it within the document. So I always just start at 1/2 inch because I like a generous margin with good white space. If I run out of space, I can make it smaller later. And then always when you have a print file, you need at least 0.125 of bleed, and I'll show you how that works later. You can go above that if you want, but this is the minimal amount you might need. So in case it's tight, that's the number I like to put in. Okay, we have our file, and you can see this pink line going inside is our margin, and the red line going beyond the layout or the trim is the bleed. And so I'm just going to hit Command V or Control V if you're on a PC, and there is my poster ready to size up. So I'm going to get rid of all these extra pieces I don't need, like the number and these pieces I created to cut off the sides. And I'm just going to grab all of this, and remember our power scaling. So you hit Shift and Command or Shift and Control if you're on a PC, and that's going to size everything together. And if you add in the Option or Alt key, it'll do it from the center. So hold the Option key. That means you're holding all 3 buttons at the same time while you're dragging this, but it saves you a lot of work because it sizes everything together. So I'm just going to kind of put this in the ballpark. This background, I don't know that I'll stay with this color, but I will stay with the background. This background needs to be dragged all the way out past the bleed and take any stroke off of it. So if you have a background color, it shouldn't have a stroke, and it should go at least to the bleed, which is that red line outside our document. So drag that out there. And then we have some other elements here to contend with just to get this in the ballpark of what we're looking for. So this should definitely be centered on the page. So I'm going to go over here to the Properties panel, which I always keep open, and I'm going to align it centered. And make sure right now this is aligned to the selection, so it's aligned to the background or something it's selected. We want it aligned to the page. So now if I hit Align, it centers it. This copy is not centered copy. It's copy that I stacked, so we can't really center that. But if you drag a guide from the left-hand side rulers to the center of that circle, which we know is centered, I can start to center this right on that. So I think the center of the A in Beach is it. Okay, so my type is pretty sized. I mean, I could go a little bit bigger. I could hold the Shift and Command or Control and the Option or Alt from the center. And the reason why you need to do all that is because Shift will keep things proportionate. Option or Alt sizes from the center, and Command or Control sizes everything. So the text within the box, the objects, whatever you've got, it'll size it all together, and that's what makes it so useful. And then I'm going down here and I've got these film strips. Now you can see that the stroke got sized and it threw it off a little bit. So I'm going to have to select that. I'm going to open up the strokes panel, and I'm going to make this larger first of all, now that we're got it larger. And I'll probably adjust this because my graphics need adjusting. And so it's at 4 now. I'm guessing this went probably over 200%, so I'm going to put it at 11 and see if that is it. So that what this means is that when you select a dashed line, that you then get to space out the spaces in the dash. So you can make all kinds of different graphics by doing this. It's pretty interesting. So that looks about right to me. And now that I have the first one set, I can copy those characteristics by selecting the second line. I'm going to use the eyedropper. I'm going to drop it right on the first line, and it will copy those characteristics. So you can do that with type, and you can do that with line, and you can do it with color, so I'll show you more of that later. My third stroke line here. Everything that is a graphic needs to either go within the margins, which is this pink line, or it needs to go all the way out to the bleed line. So these film strips need to go off to the side. Now all of my graphics go off to the side, and you can see that at the bottom there's some space left, but this is a good time to prepare for the logos we have to put in. So I'm going to put a box at the bottom that goes to the bleed. I'm going to fill this with black. I don't know that that's the color I'm going to use, but this just kind of tells me to allow for that space. So now that I've got everything in place, let's preview that. Now let's start working on the graphics. The layout I have here is all flat vector graphics, so there's no need to look into the PPI or resolution. All you want to do if you have vector graphics is just kind of go in close and make sure that everything looks good. These look a little bit inconsistent, so I'm going to trade them out for some better ones. And looking at this sun, it looks a little disproportionate, so I'm going to check that over here on my properties panel. I see that the width is 6.3, but the height is 5.9. So somewhere this got squished, so I'm just going to put 6.5 for both. I can always scale it. So if I want to scale it down, hold the shift key, something like that. Now those graphics are looking good, but these are easy because these are vector graphics. What if you were working with an image? So when I have an image, first I'm going to put this behind the type. With an image, I have to keep an eye on the resolution in addition to the bleed. You can see that the image goes all the way to the bleed on all four sides, so that's really important. It has to hit those red bleed lines on the side. The other thing it has to do is have at least 200 ppi at this size. So that's when we check on the links panel, and my links panel is set up to say the resolution right next to the file name, and you can set yours up that way by going to panel options, and into the show column you can click on effective PPI. Remember, the effective PPI is the resolution of this image at this size. That's the most important number. So I put it in my panel so I can immediately go there and see if this is correct. The other thing you're going to notice is that that resolution is one number. Now watch what happens when I disproportionately scale this image. And let me open that up. Now do you see how the resolution is two different numbers? That's because if you look up here, you'll see that it's 25.52% horizontal, but it's 26.3 vertical. So that's disproportionate scaling, and you got to really watch for that. It's easy to do. So at least if you do it, you can fix it by looking on your links panel and making sure that there's always only one number for the resolution. You can also combine both image and vector graphics if you wanted to. So we could still have our film reels as vector graphics. I'll just paste these over as they are, but maybe they could be bigger or something. And you can go to the properties panel, and this is kind of a cool effect you can achieve by combining these, is to adjust the blend modes. So my vector graphic, the opacity, I have all of it selected. I'm going to take the blend mode, and again you find that here on the appearance panel in the properties panel, and you choose any of these. These first group will make it darker, so that gives kind of a subtle effect. Let's go to preview mode so we can really see what this does. We're down. You could put it on color dodge. That goes lighter. So this first group is all darker. like overlay is darker. That's a really cool effect. We've got darken. It gets pretty weird down here with difference. That's a cool effect, right? You could combine those and get some really cool effects with vector graphics and images. Just make sure your images are at least 200 ppi. Your vector graphics you don't have to worry about. Okay, let's go back to our flat graphic, because at this point I think that we need to take a look at color again. When you're doing 4 or 5 layouts, however many you send to the client, it's impossible to run down each of those with different color options. So what I like to do is, once I know which direction they want to go, then I explore things like type and color. So let's talk about color on this one. The first thing I would do is duplicate the page so that you still have the original layout in that color scheme and you can test another color scheme against it. So to duplicate a page with everything on it, we'll just hold the Option key and drag it. And now if it gives you a weird staggered layout like that, go to your Properties panel. That means we have Facing Pages checked. Now if I uncheck that, you'll see that one page is above the other. Perfect. I want to keep with this orange and blue because they're opposites on the color chart, but I just think maybe it could go a little darker and richer. So I found these two color schemes, and I'm just going to paste this on to the board of the second one. And then we're going to use one of these great features, the Color Theme tool, to make some color schemes from this. So I'm just going to grab this first one, grab the Color Theme tool, and I'm just going to slide it over all those colors. And I've got this color scheme, so I'm going to add that to my swatches panel, and then I'm going to reload the Color Theme tool by clicking on it again, and this time I'm going to add this color scheme. And I'm going to put that in my swatches panel. So now, when I go to swatches, do you see colorful theme here? Number 1 and number 2. So now I've got some colors I can play around with. So I'm going to get rid of that art, put it in preview mode, and I'll just start playing around with these colors and see if I come up with something I like better than the original. Okay, so after playing around with some of these colors I generated, I've decided I actually like the colors I had to begin with, so I'm going to stick with those colors. And the next thing we need to do is play around with the type.